Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, back for another video. So today I'm going to be talking about Black Mirror season 5, episode 1, because you guys, I loved it. And that was completely unexpected. So let's go ahead and talk about it. I'm not really a sci-fi girl. I've read some science fiction. I've read some Aldous Huxley and some Ray Bradbury and some George Orwell, and I think that they count. But I just feel like the terrors of the present are just so pressing and so consuming and horrifying that I don't want to think about the horrors of the future, okay? I don't want to think about the technology that should be keeping me awake at night. You know, it's just like, there's too much. But I decided to watch Black Mirror and this particular episode because I've seen so many people talking about it and reviewing it. I saw Just Latasha's video, I saw Adrian Expression's video, and Jules's video, and I saw them talking about the plot, and I was just like, that sounds interesting to me, that sounds like something I could get into. So I decided to watch that episode. And of course I watched it twice because that's what I do. And then I watched the rest of the series. I freaking love this show. I love this show. I don't know. I've been sleeping. It's y'all's fault too, because somebody should have told me something. But let's get into the depths and the layers of this episode. So of course I was drawn initially to this because I just like to see Black people. This episode begins in a nightclub. I really don't know what year it is. I assume we're in the recent past. You know, you can't really tell by the way people are dressed because they kind of were dressed like how I dressed when I went to parties in college, but you never know. And in that opening, the cars that were passing by the club were like classic cars. So I don't really know what the year is, but it's like around this time. Immediately, we see the main characters of this episode. It's Danny, who is the male partner, and Theo, who is the female partner. And they are at this bar, and Danny buys Theo a drink, and they're pretending not to know each other. And then like the big reveal, or the first big reveal, is they know each other. They're actually lovers, and they were doing a role play thing. And an important note here is how Danny says, "Oh, my baby's into role play," and they're passionate. And then we cut to a sex scene, which is totally fine because Anthony Mackie is, cute enough. And Nicole Bahari, who plays Theo, is gorgeous, beautiful. But for that scene, we're supposed to take away that this is a loving, sexual couple that has lots of fire and passion. And we also get some other details, like Danny goes out on a balcony and he's obviously living his best young adult urban life and, carefree and having fun, and he's eating pizza, cold pizza. And then we see him sit on the couch to play a video game called Striking Vipers with his roommate, Carl. And they're just doing, early 20s stuff. I will say it is a little distracting because they are doing, early 20s stuff when it's obvious that Anthony Mackie and the man who plays Carl, his first name is Yaya. I don't know what his last name is, but these are people in their 40s, but that's okay. We can suspend disbelief. That's what fiction is about. Anyways, the point is that these are carefree Black people. They're living their best lives. They're smoking weed. They're playing video games. Danny's like, I have to work tomorrow. And it's like, you're going to the club and up playing video games, that's a different kind of life, okay? I have to go to bed at 10:30. But yeah, they're carefree. And I think I said earlier that these are people in their early 20s. They're actually in their later 20s because then we flash forward 11 years to Danny's 38th birthday. So in that first scene, they're 27. Danny is celebrating his 38th birthday with kind of a party, kind of backyard cookout kind of thing. And what I thought was really interesting is that even though we flash forward in time, aesthetically, it feels like we flashed back. So Danny is wearing his real, it's like early Mad Men kind of outfit, complete with the Malcolm X glasses. And Theo is doing her, suburban 1950s housewife thing. Even down to the house frock and the blonde bob. And they're doing this all in their mid-century ranch style house, So they are living, it's like the archetypal suburban Americana. Like, that's their life. And they have a child. This scene was really interesting to me because it feels like here that the writers of this episode were kind of trying to do the thing that Jordan Peele did in Us, where it's like you make Black people the face of like the stereotypical Americanness, you know? We give the aesthetic, we give the nuclear family, we give the suburban home. It's very much that. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think that this episode was written for Black people. I think that this is like, I don't know, but it feels to me like this is like a real triumph of colorblind casting because it works. It really works. And, you know, whenever you put Black people in anything, it kind of becomes about race, but I don't know if it was written with that in mind. Here we see the real contrast between that carefree late 20s life that Danny, Theo, and Carl were living back then and the kind of stifled, passionless, unfulfilled life that Danny and Theo seem to be living now. I mean, it's pretty clear that they're not having the most fun. I mean, you know, Danny is even out here lusting over butt cracks. So something is missing. And then Carl comes back in. There's been a little period of separation. Carl broke up with this girl. He comes back in and gives Danny a birthday gift, and it's Striking Vipers X. He says X, but throughout this entire episode, I was bothered because I feel like it should be Striking Vipers 10 instead of Striking Vipers X. But anyways, he gives him the latest edition of Striking Vipers, and that's how they're going to reconnect. And this edition has a virtual reality add-on. Carl is newly separated. Danny is just living his kind of humdrum suburban life, but you know, he doesn't seem, I think it's important to note here that Danny and Theo seem to genuinely love each other. It's just their home life is just, you know, humdrum. No sparks. But Carl also seems to be unhappy, despite the fact that he is this bachelor. There is an undercurrent in his reconnecting moment with Danny where it's just like, he's just looking for something and he's going to go out with his new younger girlfriend. You know, they're both looking for things. Carl is missing something. He goes out with his younger girlfriend and she don't know who Dennis Rodman is. And Danny and Theo, we see them after the party. You know, this is like a real couples moment where like you've been out all day and you're eating and you're just like, I'm tired. Like, you know, and when sex kind of becomes a chore, and for them, it's a chore, like something they have to do because they want to try to have another baby. So now something that's supposed to be so passionate is now regimented and timed out and scheduled. So that night, Carl and Danny play Striking Vipers 10 for the first time. They have their little VR chips and they put them on. And the thing about this new kind of Striking Vipers is you can feel in your body all of the sensations of the players in the game. So Carl always chooses the girl named Roxette, and Danny always chooses Lance. And so they're in the game and it's like they're really in it and they're feeling it and they're feeling the hits and all of that. And then, you know, it takes a little while for Danny to get the hang of things because he's, you know, grown. He has responsibilities. He's not playing games all day. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're fighting. Then all of a sudden, Roxette is on top of Lance. And then Roxy kisses Lance. And it gets weird. It's weird because remember, these are actual people inhabiting these characters and their bodies are feeling all of the sensations. So we know that Carl is making a decision to get on top of Danny as Lance and kiss him. What's going on? What are you doing, Carl? And that's when I was like, oh yeah, this is good. They're both freaked out by it. They immediately exit the game, which I think is really interesting because it's like Carl seems to be freaked out by it too, despite the fact that like you made the decision to get on top of him and kiss him. So what's your, how are you confused? But they take a little bit of time apart and they're trying to work through what happened. But it's obvious that Danny is also kind of liking it because he gets aroused. And whereas before he wasn't trying to have sex, later he and Theo have, something is going on. And so for the next few shots of this episode, we just see Danny and Carl just looking like, what? Just like staring out in silence at their jobs, at homes, just trying to figure out what the fuck. Because it is crazy. Of course, they do play again. And there was some, I don't know, maybe it was kind of some gay panicky stuff after Roxy kissed Lance the first time they played. And so Danny and Carl are kind of talking and they're like, I'm drunk. And it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. So they go back into the game and then immediately they start making out and then they do it. They have sex. And it's like, oh, this is interesting. And then afterwards, they're talking as the characters in the game. And I don't know I think it's Danny who says to Carl's character or Lance who says to Roxy, like, ooh, is this gay now?
So, guess that's us gay now. That's a joke.
Don't feel like a gay thing.
There's like confusion. And that is such an interesting moment, right? Because it's like, what even is gay? What is sexuality? Like that's the best thing about this episode is it really just messes you up because it's like, what even is, like, how do we even define this? When Danny and Carl as Lance and Roxette are trying to do their initial working through of like, is this gay? And what's the sexuality? And what's going on here? For me, I'm like, ooh, these are good questions because it's like, so much of what we've put onto gender is a fiction. Not 100%, right? Not 100%, but the bulk of the way that we categorize gender stuff is just completely made up, right? We just made it up and it's arbitrary and, one century it's this and the next century it's that, right? And it's like, what is the foundation of our attraction? Certainly there's some physical stuff to it, but even that physical stuff is arbitrary. Are we attracted to muscular bodies? Are you attracted to beards? Are you attracted to big foreheads? Are you attracted to boobs or breasts or torsos? Like, what is that? And I think that for most of us, the breadth of our sexual attractions and our physical attractions are much larger than we even know because we don't even have an opportunity to explore that stuff, right? People are so busy telling us at 3, 4, and 5 that we have a boyfriend or we have a girlfriend that we don't even have the opportunity to really learn, like, what am I attracted to? It can't just be genitals, right? Because you can't see somebody's genitals when you see somebody walking down the street. So what is it? So good. Already. Both Danny and Carl are into it. And now it's like they're having a full-on affair. Kinda. It depends on what your boundaries are. Kind of. Because it does feel like there's some sneakiness to it. Because Danny is kind of secretly texting and rolling over and, trying to text Carl real quick about it. But it's not physical. It actually reminds me of like back in the day. And this is for the old head internet people, okay? Old heads, stand up. But back in the day when you would go into like a chat room or like there was certain software and you would choose an avatar and you would cyber, that's what it reminds me of. And I'm not going to explain what that is, but if you know, you know. This episode is about men. I mean, it's called Striking Vipers, for God's sake. Obviously, this is a male-centered episode, but I did like that we did not give short shrift to Theo. We get some really good acting from Nicole Bahari and some good character development from her, too. Because then we see her going out and trying to kind of get her groove back. But girl, when she went to that bar or that club or wherever, she was dressed old, okay? Like, sis, leave your sensible heels at home. But we see her exiting the bar and she's standing outside waiting for her Uber or her Lyft or whatever. And she sees this couple and they're making out and all over each other. And she kind of stares at them for just a second. And we see in that moment, there is desire and longing in her as well. It's not that Theo is perfectly fine and happy and Danny is the only one who's looking for more. They're both experiencing some malaise. Just on like a quick technical note, I loved the use of silence in this episode. This is a really quiet show and I love that. I think that silence is really great at helping people to convey without words sadness, emptiness, desire, longing. There are just so many shots where we see Danny just looking out a window. We see Carl just sitting and staring. It's really, really effective in helping us build a mood. You know, it's pretty melancholy. A major reason why I found this episode so pleasurable to watch and to think through and to dissect is because I don't know how to categorize the kind of sexual relationship that Carl and Danny are having, because Carl is not Roxette and Danny is not Lance. And it's like, what is it? My mind, I want to put it in a box so badly, but like, you can't. And it's like, this is a queer relationship, right? Or is it not because it's a woman and a man? I don't know. And that's fun for me. It's the not knowing is very fun. Another thing that complicates this relationship is they keep doing it and it feels like they're addicted to it, you know? So we're trying to figure out, is this about intimacy? Is it just about the sexual part? You know, because like, pleasure is insatiable. I heard Cornel West say that once. Pleasure seeks out more pleasure. Is this an addiction the way that like watching porn compulsively is an addiction? Or is this, like I mentioned earlier, is this like a full-on affair where it's about their unique connection to each other? Danny and Carl's sexual thing becomes a distraction. I mean, it makes them withdraw from their real life relationships. So Danny stops having sex with his wife and Carl is still dating that little young girl, even though, I mean, him and the young girl, we're about the same age, but you know, young for him. And they are just addicted to having virtual sex with each other. It becomes such a distraction that Danny forgets his anniversary and Theo confronts him about it. And there's this great scene when they're having their anniversary dinner where Theo, Nicole Bahari, by the way, gorgeous and wonderful, wonderful actress. The work that she does in that scene with Danny where she's like, why don't you want me? Why don't you want me? You always used to want me. Oh, great. But there's still a disconnect because Danny is not ready to come clean about why he's pulled back. Again, here we do get some good Theo character development where she's explaining to Danny, yeah, it's boring. It's boring. We're trying to live this life and raise our kid and it's boring, but we're here because we're building a life together and we're trying to develop this stable yet passionless life for the good of our family. So I'm here. Are you here? Really good, really interesting questions it brings up. Does loyalty and stability demand that you let go of some of that passion, some of that fire? You know, because a lot of that fire comes from spontaneity, right? But like, you need to have routine and stability and sameness for the sake of your children. Or at least you need to be able to, if you can't do it yourself, you need to be able to hire somebody to do it for you. So at this point, I was still going back and forth between like, what is it? What are they doing? Is it intimacy? Is it romantic? Is it just sexual? And I do think that they were both looking for intimacy. Carl is definitely intimacy starved. He's looking for that connection. He's going through this breakup. And it seems like maybe Danny is looking for a different kinds of intimacy, like an intimacy matched with passion and spontaneity and pleasure and fun. And like sex is the outlet for that. And that makes sense to me because like, for a lot of us, like, our lives are pretty boring. We're not Beyonce and Jay-Z. We're not island hopping or whatever. And so sex is the way for us to explore that kind of the primal urges that we have. And it's fun and it feels good and it's pleasurable. And like, we just don't have a lot of outlets for that. And I really think that whoever wrote this has to be a fan of Esther Perel. It's spelled Esther if you're going to Google it. But Esther Perel is a relationship expert, and she has changed my mind on so many things about relationships and love, in particular about cheating. And we think of cheating as just being like this purely selfish act and it's nonsensical. But Esther helps me to understand that cheating is about having a space to be who you wish you were in the rest of your life, right? So like, you have to be one thing in the family part of your life, and in your affair, when you're cheating, that's your safe place to go off and be the fun you, the spontaneous you, the young you, the carefree you, And so when it comes to what Danny is doing, which, it's cheating. At this point, it's cheating. If you're sneaking around, it's cheating. It feels like for me that that's what Danny was going for. He just needed a space to be fun Danny, sexual Danny. But because cheating is not just about the physical act and the pleasure and all of that, Danny wants to be able to go off and have his little rendezvous, but also be a committed father and husband, because that is valuable to him too. But finally, the guilt catches up to Danny and he breaks up with Carl and they separate. And then 7 months later, it's Danny's 39th birthday. And Theo's big surprise is she's invited Carl over. And when Theo leaves the room, Danny and Carl have this another really good scene, this intense confrontation where Carl is basically like begging Danny to come back and do it again. And again, like, this is where it gets messy, because it's like, is it about intimacy? Is it about sex? Is it an addiction? Because Carl, the way that he was sounding so desperate and talking about, I've tried all this stuff and I did it with the polar bear and all of that, it's like, something is wrong. Like, that's not normal, healthy behavior. He's addicted. It feels like, and this is another thing about this is, somebody who wrote this has obviously seen Brokeback Mountain, because there's a couple of Brokeback Mountain allusions here, but it really feels like, I can't quit you. I just can't quit you, but like not in a romantic way, like in a creepy way. Then that night on his 39th birthday, Danny breaks down again. He and Carl do it. And then it gets really weird. And again, this is why I'm so confused, but it gets really weird when Carl tells Danny that in the game, as Roxette tells Lance, who is Danny, I love you. And then it's like, oh, whoa, what's going on? But Danny's like, we got to meet up. In this meetup, Danny is like, look, I don't know what this is, but we got to figure it out. So let's kiss. So they kiss in the rain, and that like very Hollywood thing where it's like raining everywhere else except for directly on them. But anyways, they kiss in the rain, and then they come away from it and they both say that they don't feel anything. So this sexual attraction that they have, this animal magnetism, only exists within the confines of this game. Now, are they being completely honest about that? I don't know. But that's what they are saying. Then they start to fight because Carl is doing some real addict stuff. And he's like, okay, well, we are not attracted to each other in real life, but you still have to come back and have sex with me in the game. And then he's like, no, I don't want to do that. And then they fight. And that's another kind of Brokeback Mountain-y thing. They're black. So they get arrested. Of course, Theo has to come bail Danny out. And it's like, can you imagine getting a call in the middle of the night that your husband is arrested because he snuck out the house and is fighting somebody in the street? Come on now. You're 39. Like, it's ridiculous. And so, of course, Theo is fed up because this is ridiculous. What are you guys even doing? And so finally, on the ride back home, after they're driving away from the police station, Danny comes clean. But we don't see it we just see the beginning of it. So the next thing we know, we flash forward to Danny's 40th birthday. And I should have said at Danny's 39th birthday, Theo was very, very pregnant, like third trimester. So she was about to have a baby. So now we're at 40. She's had the baby and they have come clean and there's openness and honesty in their relationship. And so for Danny's birthday, they exchange boxes. In the box that Danny gets is that little VR plug-in thingy that he attaches to his temple. And in the box that Theo got was the box that her engagement ring or wedding ring set comes in. So that night, Danny goes off and has virtual reality sex with Carl. This is his one time of the year to do it. And we know that because there's an X on his birthday on the calendar. So they've been counting down the days. And then we see Theo. And remember earlier when Danny said to Theo, "Oh, my baby loves role play"? We see Theo in a hotel room putting her wedding ring in a box. And then she goes down to the bar or whatever, the lounge or whatever, to pick up a man. So they're both getting the opportunity to have these kind of fun, sexy, sexual encounters for one night of the year. And that's all coming about because they were open and honest with each other. And now everybody wins. Theo gets to get her groove back and be young and cute and sexy for a night because Nicole Bahari again is gorgeous. And Danny gets to hook up with his virtual reality boo. So I do think that my intimacy hypothesis is supported by the fact that the next time we see Carl, right before he hooks up with Danny again, he's holding this cat and it's like his cat is his emotional support animal. I really think that they're both just looking for connection and intimacy, and like it's easy to get that with somebody that you already know. And maybe it is about an underlying sexual attraction, but maybe it's like the attraction is not even about the physical body. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyways, loved it. I've seen a couple of people speculate that this is about Black men being able to explore their sexuality and have fun and be open, and like, maybe that's a part of it, but for me, it just felt like that is definitely a part of it. But I also think it's about aging and the passage of time. I think the fact that birthdays play such a prominent role in this narrative, it is about the parts of yourself that you lose as you get older. I feel like a lot of us, we think our best selves, or we had the most fun when we were young and carefree and before we had bills to pay and all of that. And like, you can't go back. You know, like you can only go forward. With the passage of time, we certainly get stuff. Danny and Theo have this gorgeous family and this great house and they're living their lives, but you also lose stuff. And so it seems to me that for both Danny and Theo, they were able, through their compromise, to find these outlets to be their sexual, dangerous selves, and then come back together and still have a happy, healthy partnership. Now, for Carl, it really might be the sexuality exploration thing, especially because he was really catching feelings and saying, "I love you." And like, he was inhabiting a woman's body and feeling the woman's sensation. And he was talking to Danny at one point about the difference, like the physical differences he feels having sex as a woman. I think he says one is like a band and the other is like a symphony. And so maybe he gets an opportunity to explore that broad range of feelings and emotions that a lot of us get locked out from because we're told early on that you're this, you know, and you like this. I loved that Danny and Theo were able to combat that boredom and that malaise with just being real, you know, laying everything out on the table and then coming together to find a compromise that works for both of them. I don't think that either of them got the short end of the stick. Theo got an opportunity to be more than just somebody's mama and somebody's wife, and then Danny got to do whatever. I love that. Just such a healthy model for what it means so that everybody, especially in a heterosexual partnership, can be happy and fulfilled. And when it comes to Danny and Carl, I've often asked, like, what is the difference between a friendship and a romantic relationship besides intercourse, besides rubbing genitals? You know, like what separates those? And I don't think it's a whole lot. Right? I think we put a really big emphasis on the genital rubbing part. And then, you know, of course, people want to have families. So we have the procreation part and we have the, you know, you go off and build a nuclear family part. But like, other than that, you know, if you have really good friends, it's not a lot. And so maybe those boundaries are murkier than we think. Murkier than we let on. These labels and these boundaries that we set for ourselves and we set for other people, are they that meaningful? I don't know, right? Are they as strict as we like to think that they are? I don't think so. And so I hope that if you watch this episode that you were just thinking about, like, what does it mean? What does any of this mean? What is sexuality? What is gender? What is sex? What is pleasure? I loved it. We're forced to choose. And it's like, why? Why do we have to choose? Is choosing even in our best interest? I don't know. Maybe not all the time. I also think there's a theme about how in modern society, we're going to have to make new rules. We have all of these new technologies, these new opportunities, so we're going to have to do different stuff. The traditional way of doing things is just not going to cut it for us. We're just exposed to too much. So you're going to have to be more open and more adventurous. And so to juxtapose this modern romantic agreement with Danny and Theo with that classic crooner song in the background that's supposed to typify the ethos of, you know, the golden age, you know, mid-century classic Americana. I just think that those are really great parallels for us to have. I really, really enjoyed it. And I suggest you go ahead and watch season 5 of Black Mirror. There's just so much there. A rich text. Well, that's all I have to say about that, you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I just love to sit here and do this. Go ahead and go on over to Patreon and watch me talk about the book that I think everybody should read. I talked about it and I also shared my notes over there. I've been talking about all kinds of stuff, breakups, mental health, pop culture stuff. Head on over there. I appreciate all of your support over on Patreon. Leave a comment, send me a message on Instagram or Twitter, sign up for the email newsletter, buy some merch. I will see you next time. I don't know what the next thing I'm going to do is. I appreciate y'all. I will see you next time. Bye.